When was the first walk?
First walk was 6 years ago.
6 years?
Yeah. And we walked from near here on the Welsh border. We walked from Hale White to here, to the village, to Titley.
And
you
that was
joined
the first
us.
one, yeah.
You met us, and then you
had
about 3 days with us, and you bailed out.
Yeah, I went to Wembley.
Go and watch Burnley at Wembley.
Yeah. Get my priorities right.
Well, such a rare event.
Yeah. Okay, so start with that then. Okay, the first walk. Did you already have all these ideas and opinions about wanting to write or sing or play something to do with the land and walking and your place and all that sort of thing?
Increasingly, it was beginning to pervade the songwriting, and I think that when you get into it, what is a passion for walking, it does take, it takes over. You can easily become an obsessive with that as well, but it was just, landscape, it seemed to fit. I was doing a lot of walking, here, there, everywhere. Landscape is so much part of that. It seemed to me it gave a context for the rest of my life in folk music and so on. The other aspect of it all was that I had this burning idea, this silly idea that one day I would walk to a gig. It literally is like that, and I sang to people and everybody smiling like you're doing. And Rob Chalice, bless him, just said, "Go for it. It's a great idea." And that was the start. Instead of just travelling there as you've done it, I've done it so many years in the tour bus and just staring out, which is what I do. Looking, where's that? Looking at the map. Oh, I'd like to walk that range of hills. They look good.
Yeah, watching skylines from a tour bus is.
Yeah. And then. So thinking that you could do it, how far would you have to walk for the gig to have a meaning in another town? Could you do a village? Where would you play? And the answer really was that you played anywhere, play wherever you could find a place that you could set up and do it. And then in the first one, our instruments travelled in fans' cars and friends' cars. You didn't even know where they were, and somehow you all got to wherever it was you were going to be going. Whether it was a church by the side of the canal, we played open air. We played lots of pubs, and small breweries, and it just, I don't know, it just took off.
Do you think that idea that you've talked about before, which is that the physical thing of walking onto a stage with Oyster Band to the central microphone within a room full of people, but then there's the equivalent, complete opposite of it, reverse of it, which is walking off stage into an open space where there's very few people there and it's just countryside and loveliness?
Absolutely.
Did you have that idea before you started this, or is that?
It's evolved. I think I did partly have that idea. They're both magic to me. I didn't realise that they were linked.
There was a connection.
There was a connection, quite in a way, and I thought they were the opposites. In many ways, they seem to be the opposite. Solitude is one, and solidarity and wanting reaffirmation all the time, aren't you? When you're on stage, you really need to be told all the time by the numbers of people or by fans that what you're doing. They sing you songs, they make you feel good. It's a magical experience, and I thought there was nothing better. Then you walk off the stage and you go and find somewhere that is, a gorge that's so big, or just the silence of a wood that's so profound, and even close to home, just little bits, just wandering down by the lake and so on. You just find moments where you get lost in that, and I find that captivating in a way, a moment, just like I can feel when I first walk out on the stage.
Yeah, because there's a thing where, for a while, I used to think that getting out into the countryside, walking, for instance, is was always about escaping from technology and 24-hour communication. The fact that anyone can be in touch with you all the time. And in fact, on the very first walk, possibly on the first day or maybe the second day, it was a big joke because Rob Chalice was on his BlackBerry, still trying to arrange concerts and stuff while he walked along. So much so that he fell into a ditch, which I know you found really amusing. Well, I just felt really sorry for him and was helping whilst you were laughing. But there was that thing. It's a way of getting away from that buzz of information and communication all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas I've come to realise that actually going into the woods and the hills and the mountains or whatever, you're making different. It's still all about connections.
It is.
But they're lovely natural ones that we've sort of forgotten about. And they're there all the time.
I mean, I at that point where I love the vagueness of the vagaries of the countryside, and I love occasionally being lost, as people are always reminding me, you know. And
have you ever been lost on any of these walks? I've not noticed.
The last thing that you need is some bright spark. This GPS and nowhere, you know, coming and telling you exactly where you are, because it's just you, the map, and a group of people, and there's a great deal of fun out there. You know that you can walk out of it. You know that you're.
And it's like you said, getting lost isn't the problem. It's
just
working out what to do when you are lost.
We walked for a whole day once, just with my walking mates around here, in heavy mist and fog in the Black Mountains, and it was just so evocative. And it wasn't until we were looking for the ruins of Craswell Priory, and when we found them, we stumbled upon them. Yeah. And they've never looked more ghostly. It was just fantastic. It's probably the best time we've ever seen them.
Yeah, yeah.
And we then went up Black Hill after it, and it was literally, you know, almost crawling on your hands and knees. And then getting down to the pub, and the conversation was totally different because you were robbed of your external views and your vastness, your bigness, your place in this great landscape. However, you internalise the walk, and you just, you know, you're putting one foot in front of another. You're watching where you feel damp with the mist and so on. I don't know. Maybe that isn't everybody's cup of tea or whatever it is, but I can even get off on that.
Yeah, it's what feeds you, sort of thing. It's funny because in a way you've sort of set up this lovely idea, which is walking between gigs and the Ramblers and different people, playing with different people, but always about where you are, countryside, place, land, etc. But that you've sort of got to stick to that unless you change the name of the band and change the entire ethos of what you're doing.
Well, there's two things about that. I mean, one is that it connects you to people and gets you out there. You know, I mean, I have said that, like, walking, being out there is like my drug, my gym, and it's my church. It's like that's the closest that I get to spirituality. So, I mean, being out there, I think, funds my well-being, my creativity. The other aspect of it is I don't walk for charity. I don't walk without purpose. I walk to a gig, and the gig is just as important. In fact, the walk stops. You know, and you have a pint, and you just all stop sweating, and you calm down, and you're all really happy because you did it together. Then the serious business of the gig starts, and you've got music to play. You know, your defences are down. You've no dressing room to hide in. You're knackered.
Yeah.
And you've got to come in
covered in shit.
Yeah. And you've got to deliver. And that's the thing of it as well. And that's got to be professional. And that's the other edge of it. So you've always got that thing that does, you know, that's the second motivation, that the gig is good. And as you've actually said it yourself, and you've sort of when you've joined us, there's no artifice by the time you arrive. You're absolutely, you're robbed of the pretend. You're robbed of your character.
Yeah.
Of what you normally hit the stage with. But you're also, all your anxiety is taken away. Bloody hell, I feel I'm exhausted, but I'm going to enjoy playing this song. Just
because you know that thing where one of your relatives after a gig said his only comment on the entire gig of watching Oyster Band was it that fancies this end, doesn't it?
That's right.
But
you like limelight.
You like limelight.
Yeah.
And the Ramblers is good because you're willingly giving all that up. You're going.
Yeah.
I think at first when you started doing the walks, there was an element of, here's John, he's leading the walk, and lots of people have come along to, because whereas now I think it's more, we're doing a walk, come along if you want, and as you say, you get to a gig and you can't pretend to suddenly step into that.
Yeah. It was difficult at first. I found that transition because we've all protected ourselves, and me more than others. I've always had that. You have the image that goes with it. You hide away, and that was hard. The first walk or two walks, I disappeared. I didn't stay in the pub with everybody. I went and had a shower. I had an hour and a half to myself, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you get changed and you come back a different person, or you think you do. But in the end, really...
And that's cheating, frankly. Isn't it, with the Ramblers?
It is.
You have to be dirty and sweaty, otherwise it's not, it's not right.
As you know, we've been on stage stinking, it's like there's been no time to go and get cleaned up and whatever. So that was hard work, but it was good for me in a way, because that...
Did your ego take a battering?
Of course it did, yeah, absolutely, yeah, but probably a good thing.
But you set up that situation yourself, so...
Yeah.
Only yourself to blame.
Yeah, and I think it's done me good. Yeah. In a way, the idea that you step off stage and you can do this is the other side of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just playing in another band with another bunch of musicians or whatever. It's a different day. Everybody that comes and plays gives a day. Each day is a walk, and it's sharing. And not everybody wants to share. People love their space.
Yeah, and also people, an audience, there's this thing which I call the Pope's Big Hat syndrome, which is that the audience in a church or whatever, in a Catholic church, they want to see the guy at the front with the gold silk robes with the huge hat on. They don't want someone getting up from the audience and going, "Now I'm just like you."
I know.
They think, "No, I want something to look up to."
Yeah.
And so you're sort of, and that rock and roll is exactly like that. Yeah. You sort of don't really want to find out that these
he's just a normal bloke after
just
all,
normal blokes,
and he gets mucky and loses his way. And,
but people know that you or people know that you're not anyway, because you do something really creative that's quite special. But yeah, you're a normal bloke. You look at the map the wrong way around sometimes. hey, we've all done it. You more than most.
You are playing with the iconography of like music, and
absolutely.
And if this sounds a bit grandiose, but in a secular society, people take those roles if there's no religious figures and so on. Yeah, and you can become huge. But of course, in this country, people are. The weakness and the strength of this country is they build you up and they knock you down. So, in a sense, showing that you are, I don't know, there's other depths to you, or a depth to you, and walking was a risk because it was very, very, for a lot of people, walking a long distance is the most mundane and boring thing to do. Yeah. And for me to make that seem exciting and seem for me to want to do it rather than talk about the state of the world,
Yeah.
and to keep up the passion of like oyster songs and the idea. Yeah, it's a risk.
But okay, so getting onto the album, it feels like with the first album that you were still sort of taking the risk because you weren't really clear what all this thing was. Whereas now it feels like, okay, you've got this sorted. You know what it is. You know how it works. It's really enjoyable. You can be confident in letting, taking off your stage mask and just getting dirty, and because it works, and people love it, and it's great. And I think the album reflects that. It sounds like the culmination of having done all that walking and thinking and talking.
That's interesting, and
Drinking.
it's good of you to say. I think that the first album was difficult. I made it largely with Al Scott, and then with guests, and I think the first steps for that one were a real voyage of discovery. It was not only doing something different, but stepping outside of the band that I've been part of for nigh on 30 years, and having different musicians in, and starting to just present your own stuff. Yeah, it's.
Did you have to consciously think this isn't allowed to sound like Oyster Band?
Oh yeah, and I think the album.
Actually physically, how did you? What did you do?
With the first album,
rules?
There were some rules. The first album, we went for groove-based things, which is not what the Oyster Band do. We went for no drum, bass, guitar built up. Tracks were built up from the vocals.
Yeah.
So it started every track with the vocal to a drone. Chords were like not even in it.
Right.
It's totally different from the way that Oyster Band structures its songwriting, structures its approach, or whatever. It was, it was all to do with the melody line, to do with my singing, finding the right key. That's why the keys are all different. I mean, that's maybe people don't notice, but they are. And every song was, examined.
I noticed. Having to play them.
Every song was looked at in that particular way.
Yeah.
And they, at certain tracks, we left the drone.
Yeah.
We put some we put like a drum drum thing in, which then real drums then replaced, just to get a more organic sound, if I might use that word. And it was just literally built up like that.
It's funny because a lot of people would think that, especially people who aren't like big fans of Oyster Band, would think that your voice typifies Oyster Band, and that therefore if you sing on anything, it's going to sound like Oyster Band.
Yeah, well, there is a.
Do you know what I mean? It's such a big part of how people recognise things.
Yeah.
The lead singer's voice.
Well, somebody said that when I played them the new album, that I've just done the album that we're talking about, the second album, and somebody said, well, it sounds like a John Jones album, just like every Oyster Band album does, and that was their...
Yeah, but they weren't saying it sounds like an Oyster Band album, were they?
No, they were saying that even Oyster Band albums sound like, because I'm ever present.
Yeah.
And that is, it's a thing. It's why on this album we've used great people like Rowan Goodell singing with me. There are a lot more voices on this album. Yeah, it's still my album. In that, of course it is.
Rowan's voice is brilliant.
And she's a great singer.
Yeah.
And just to use that and to do duets with her.
Yeah.
That's nothing. I don't really do that on the Oyster Band albums.
Yeah.
And to have you singing and to have lots of other people playing on it and so on. It's but also, the thing that marks it out is that the material, the songs are. I just know they're not Oyster Band songs, and they wouldn't get heard otherwise. But yet, after a day's walking in a pub, out in rural Gloucestershire or wherever it is, they're folky, they feel right. There's a sense of time and place about them, and I don't know, they just seem right for that.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, there are going to be people that listen to the album that perhaps don't even know any of the backstory about the walking and everything. Somebody in Germany who sees the album in a shop and plays it, and do you think any of that comes through, or do you think they just think, yeah, it's a nice album?
An album has to stand up on its own, doesn't it? Everything that you do has to stand up separately. What I would hope that they will get from it is what I think that, I'm not a great fan of country music, American country music, but they tell simple stories and manage to make bigger songs out of them, and I've always wanted to do this.
Yeah, for big themes, little stories.
Yeah, strange and beautiful but contradictory country that we live in. Wandering through it, through small towns with their stories and out-the-way villages on hidden footpaths, and you get these haunting stories and these little snippets from pubs like this or from wherever. That thing fascinates me. It always has.
Yeah.
It's the underbelly, the undercurrent of history is made by people who make huge decisions, and it's experienced by people who don't have that. They are the people who live, and that's what I think I was trying to get at with some of these stories, just to make simple lives and small events just have a voice.
Do you think how much of that is rooted in coming from Meltham, and also in working out whether you were going to move away from Meltham and discover bigger ideas?
I think lots of it. It's I've been trying to write some of this down, and I find it quite difficult because I have this double-edged side, and that is I walked back to Meltham recently and realised what a beautiful place it was, but yet it's filled with sad memories. There's, my mother being ill and, various other things and moving away. And I'm the person that moved away. So I have to be careful about my relationship to it. But I saw it on a sunny day from this hill called West Nab above it, and it just looked fantastic,
Could you see people fighting in the main square where you were?
No, it was a tough place. It had, early on, when there was plenty of work there, it had character, it had a civic pride, it had lots of things. When you take away the work from a place, a place inevitably suffers and declines in some way. And it was, the humour there is really, really sharp, and it's very almost aggressive sometimes, and that's in me. And so is this thing of being brought up with the stories of the place, these great big hills around you, which I can name even now, and remember them, granddad's stories. But I've always been fascinated by working class life, what I would call the triumphs of working class life, not just all this tragic, not just shameless, and that existed, but I thought there was a lot, there was tremendous stories, people that lifted themselves out of it, and people that existed with it, and so on. I just love it, and I think folk music gives you that connection as well to your past.
One thing folk music does is in a way that's maybe a bit too obsessive, I think sometimes, is that it dwells in the past. There's this obsession with tradition, and it's lovely, all those stories and everything. And I think I get the impression that what you're doing with some of your stories, you're saying, yes, I'll look back at tradition, but I'm going to look back 10, 15, 20 years rather than 100 years, and you're saying this is how villages have changed, this is how towns have changed, this is how the countryside's changing. You're basically trying to say history is happening now rather than it just being part of some almost mythical, lovely garden past, you know.
I think that's so important. I can remember going on this discovery of traditional singers and voices, and thinking that was the real, you know, nothing that Simon Cowell did, you know, through gave you an insight into real people and communities and what had happened to them. But what has happened to some of these communities and these people, it shapes their life, their attitudes and so on. And I thought to understand that, I had to go through the whole of listening to them, you know, and then finding my own voice through that way. That took me way deep into traditional folk music, and I absolutely loved it. You know, my journey since then has been to let that grasp of history that it had on me and of how music should be, I've just released that over the years. And Oyster Band has been about finding contemporary ways of saying the same thing. So trying to represent a voice from underneath, you know, as I said, those that have to go through and experience and suffer history. So you articulate that from the bottom looking up. I think...
Are the stories on the album, the songs which are sort of very, very definitely have a story, are you telling your own story? Are they all you?
No.
In some ways?
No. In fact, I mean, one started here, in the pub.
The Black and White Bird?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I came in one evening. And
but you've... Sorry, tell the story then.
Well, Lorna, who used to work here, you know, just telling this story to the staff and to Nicola, who owns the pub, and it was just, and the story was just like unfolding at the bar, and it was just, you know, oh, weird. If I could see everybody's reaction, you know, and they said, well, and Nicola said, well, here he is, you know, here's the storyteller, you know, here's the local folk singer. Tell him it sounds like a folk song. So, I mean, she lives over the border here in like rural Wales, does Lorna, and she goes out riding, and she comes back, and in the barn, as she puts the horse away, there is a plastic bag moving around, tied up. And it's really, really spooky, because it spooks her and the horses. You know, who's done that? So she opens the bag, and out of it comes a magpie, flies up onto the beam, and then flies out of the barn. And she's thinking, that's so weird. What is it about? So, you know, because you then go into the, you know, magpie, one for joy, two for sorrow, three for all these. And I sort of remembered the rhyme, and they were talking about it. And coming from this sort of, you know, remote area, it was a scary story to a lot of the youngsters here, and to a lot of the people here. I mean, for me, I sort of made it into a slightly, I don't know, kinder. I just put a bit of a spin on it, you know. And but I just thought Black and White Bird. It just seemed to me to be, you know. Yeah,
it's just a lovely story.
Just a nice story.
It's almost like you've taken that story and you've put yourself in it as well. You've made it about, you know.
Oh, what a nice moment. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, you have to put your own slant to it, you know. I mean...
But you see, to me, that's interesting, because I think a lot of traditional songs, even the most beautiful songs, you're not necessarily putting yourself in it, you're just telling somebody else's story.
Yeah.
You're saying, this is an age-old story, and it's a lovely story, and I'm going to tell it to you. Whereas when you say, this is a story, it's about Black and White Bird, and it happened in the pub near my house, and then I embellished it with this. You know, this
Yeah,
part of it is fiction that I've put into it, and suddenly, to me, then it stops being. It's not predictable anymore. It's interesting. What's he saying? What's it about? And I think that's a good thing.
I think that you.
So the Pierpoint song.
Yeah.
Where's that come from?
Well, my
Because that's a strange song.
fascination with the job of the hangman. You know.
Is it a true story?
Partly, in the sense that Albert Pierpoint was the hangman, the last British hangman, and I've always, that happened when I was a kid. I vaguely remember that they stopped hanging people. Can't believe that they used to, way into the late 1950s, early 60s. And two things just came together in that. I mean, first of all, the fascination that someone actually did the job, and it would always in their family, and that they should be really professional about it.
Yeah.
Because it's their job.
Yeah.
The thing was, in his autobiography afterwards, Pierpoint said he never believed in it. He gave it up because it never seemed to do any good. People still kept coming. And he said, I saw a lot of brave people. I had to hang a lot of brave people.
Yeah.
And they never seemed to diminish in numbers, so I didn't quite know whether I was doing was any good.
Yeah.
There was, people questioned that because he did actually hung a lot of people. But he remembered hanging Ruth Ellis, who was the last British woman to be hung, and that was apparently a huge case.
Yeah.
I mean, blonde woman in all the papers.
Yeah.
Whether she should have been hung, whether she shouldn't, and I don't know. I just put the two together. They just became. The story's out in my imagination.
Also, is the female protagonist in the song is based roughly on
in my
Ruth
head,
Ellis?
yeah. But I know it's not in real life.
See, I'm learning something.
In my head, I had these two people. I had this, her life going wrong.
Yeah.
But finally finding happiness, and then not so on. And the point about it is that he's giving up.
It's a sort of double murder ballad, isn't it?
It is a double murder ballad, yeah.
There's a point where I can't remember the line, but there's some line about sort of, the knife being plunged in deeply, and Rowan is singing a harmony on it.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're aware that Rowan as a woman is singing that, and you just think, oh yeah, she's going for it. It's great.
There's something like 6 or 7 verses with just me. And then this verse comes in.
She creeps in, holding the blade.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Casey did a thing where she did a photographic project in Armley Jail, and they were the prison warden. Anyway, he was showing around. He was showing all these different things, and she was taking photographs. And they'd never had somebody in doing that before. And he said, "Oh, I'll show you this. And he took her into this little room that nobody went in. It had a big book in it, like this big, and he opened it up, and it was the records of the executions, and it's handwritten by the executioner, and it said things like, the date, because there were a lot of executions at Armley Jail. It said the date, and it said the name, and it would say, hung by neck, lasted 15 seconds and expired. And there's a little report on each
document of their death.
Yeah,
as well as their life. Yeah.
I just think, goodness.
Yeah.
It's so methodical, and I'll make a nice record of it now.
I think the beauty of song is that you can take something like that, something like a fragment of history, and then you can hopefully make it into something that's more, I wouldn't say more meaningful.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's got to have a really interesting narrative tune. And I'm really interested in tunes and stories that unfold in that way. Because the best folk songs have great tunes. Yeah. So trying to invent the tunes to just carry it as like a vehicle for these words. But then I like the idea that the listener is just saying, did I really hear that? Is that what?
Yeah.
Did you? did you just kill him? You know what? And those little things that just come out, and you don't sing them, and you don't bite into the words to pronounce it. Maybe you just use Rowan's voice, and you know, it just gives it that element of oh wow.
And also because the context around stories like that is people like I just did with you. People always want to know if it's true or not.
Yeah, I know.
And you've got to be careful. You have to be careful as a listener not to be disappointed if you think it's not true, because you sort of think, no, actually the beauty of it is that somebody's crafted a lovely story.
Yeah,
Not,
I think
not,
that,
not necessarily a lovely story.
Yeah,
a good story.
A good, yeah.
Out of a snippet, which
like,
is what you say you do.
If people think it's true, I like that. You know, it's just something that in interviews and talks like this, you've got to be truthful and just say how much of it is you.
Yeah.
Even then, I'm reluctant to do that because, in a sense, the best of these have an element of, you know, fact, an element of truth in them. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where you get. If it's something that could have happened, I suppose is what I'm saying.
But you're not doing a sort of Elvis Costello and saying, I'm not going to tell you what it's about. It's up to every song is up to the listener to decide.
Ian Telfer of the Oyster Band would do that. That's his thing. You know, you work it out. That's the best thing that you do. With my own stuff, I don't know. I'm quite happy to talk about the stories and where they've come from.
I think it's good. I mean, it's the same with traditional music. I think context is really important.
Yeah.
I think it's lovely because it says something about the bigger world than 4 minutes of music.
And I think also it just if you can do it, it helps you. Anyone else can get an insight into the world that you're trying to recreate. Because I think I am in a way trying to recreate a hidden England or a hidden Britain. I'm trying to evoke stories from it, try and give them a contemporary musical setting. You know, make a modern folk music or a modern country music. I don't care what you care to call it. But I mean, trying to make big songs out of small stories is where currently my songwriting has been, really.
Yeah. What's I Will Never Stop Moving, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
What's going on there?
I don't know. That was the last one that came along, and it just...
It sounds like a sort of Northern Soul route to it. It's not. It partly came because I was just amazed and amused by the reaction to the floods. You know, living here. You know, when 3-4 years ago, when the River Severn comes through and it floods Bewdley and all the way down. You know, sort of Gloucester, Tewkesbury, and people, and then the Thames Valley flooded. And there's these people going, you know, what's happening? And everybody's looking to the government and saying, we haven't spent enough money, you know, on drainage in the Somerset levels. It's just been bloody raining a lot. Yeah. And you've just built in a floodplain. Your house is like, always has been in danger, you know, but yet, and there's this classic moment when some councillor from UKIP, some right-wing reactionary says, you know, it's God's retribution.
It's
for the
same-sex marriage, you know, it's like that. And he actually says this thing, and the number of times you get this biblical imagery comes in because we can't control it, we can't sort it out, you know, and I just, you know, part of the thing was I just thought well, I'm hopefully never stop moving, and you're going through, and then I thought that's exactly what will happen. Yeah. If the rains really do come, and start to flood, they'll have to move, and they'll all, you know, what will that be like? So just, you know. But
it fits really well into the idea of, you know, doing the walks and all that sort of thing.
Well, it was also at the time. It was finishing off the album when I knew that I had cancer. I was ill. And it seemed really important to finish that song, because I was thinking of myself that particular point. And it also gave the title for the thing. But I mean, it just took on a significance, and it was optimistic. And I think that I probably needed a little bit of that at that time.
Are you saying that I'll Never Stop Moving is like saying I'm not going to die?
It wasn't ever meant to be that, but
just then when you said it,
at that point, it was, I was, when we finished the album, you came in and sang on it with Rowan on a fantastic last day. I didn't do anything, and you worked on that song, and I was...
And then wiped off all my vocals. That's fine, though. That was Al Scott.
And we were 2 weeks away from me going in for surgery, and I hadn't told you at that particular point, but I was thinking it
you were healed by the power of song.
Well, I just wanted to get it on the album.
Yeah.
Just seemed a bit of a, just a positive one, an uplifting one.
I love that song. It's great. Tell us a bit more about how suddenly, finding out that you were ill and that you had cancer informs what you write about and what you wanted to do with song and music and everything. Because it must do.
It does, but first of all, it just deadens it. I don't think... I was so relieved to get the album done, that I'd done my singing and my contributions and the writing and everything. You go into another world, and you go into the world of being a patient. And I began to feel that only the skills of the surgeon and something had to be cut out of me in order for me to go on and live again. It's just a surreal world of in a sense, being looked after, being told what to do, but you need those medical mantras. You just need them.
There's not really any sort of poetry, is there?
There is no poetry whatsoever. It's in fact your modesty.
Get in there. And
your the way you think of yourself, everything goes. And that hospital experience is just forget trying to sort of keep your dignity and your modesty, and the thing is, you're other things are going through your mind, really, really profound things. So it all went on hold. I think that's the best way of describing it. And it was, I've had 3-4 years now, I think, of quite a prolific. I've been probably my most prolific with writing and so on, and I've enjoyed it a great deal. And then right at the end of it, the sting in the tail is that I get this, and I was beginning to make all sorts of plans. All of that goes on hold. I read a lot when I was recuperating. You physically can't do what you want to do. You're held back from that. You're advised against it. So you become someone else. That's all I can. You have to be careful, and you end up being careful mentally as well. And you can't be careful when you're songwriting, when you're being creative. You've got to be imaginatively reckless. You've got to go out there and try.
But now you're over it.
Yeah.
Can we expect a concept album?
It's the first time I've never ever touched wood before, but I'm over it. Touch wood. It's like, yeah.
Do you think if you made an album that would be tempting fate?
Well, I don't know.
It would sell well though, John.
It would.
Imagine the sympathy sales.
Yeah, but I've done a lot of writing about it, but I think it'll never see the light of day.
Yeah.
You can write your way through. If it's someone like me or someone like you, you've almost got to write like a diary daily.
Yeah.
But I think it's a diatribe of illness.
Yeah.
with some moments of lightness.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure, other than other cancer sufferers, who's it for. So that will probably just be, it'll just stay there on the page, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Because I had a friend who had cancer last year, and when he was telling me about it, when it started going through the process of surgery and medicine and chemo and everything, I encouraged him to write it down, which he did, because he's good at writing. And one of the things that was interesting about it was that, well, two things. Firstly, when he finished writing this thing, which I read, and I thought, that is beautiful, it's really interesting, and I was suggesting things that he could do to do something with it. He said, oh no, I don't want to do anything with it. I haven't even showed it to my wife. He just wanted to write it.
It's a very solitary experience, this cancer. I can't explain it any more than that, but you know, I hope you never experience it, but it just is, you get so much goodwill and you get so much generosity of spirit and so many nice things are said, and you know,
but there's nothing can actually change.
Nothing can change your situation, and all the goodwill in the world, and you know, you can never say that to people. I've just said it now to camera, so we'll cut this bit out or whatever maybe. But thing is,
well, someone did cut that bit out.
Yeah, they did. It didn't mean, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
To you, it just is. You've had this. You know, it is that one word, and it is that thing. This thing has had to be cut out, and for the next 5 years, it will have to be looked at and checked, and so that changes. You know, my spirit, whatever you care to call it, my idea that I never ever had to stop and think of anything, you know, even with drinking, the whole lot that you know we've been through and you've been through. I've never had to check anything that I've ever done until now.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a, I don't know, you hit the wall and then you're allowed through it, and it's how I'm intrigued to know myself how I will pick up, you know, the whole thing. And
what people on sort of on the outside of your life are going to think is that you picked up by carrying on with Oyster Band and then suddenly releasing a new solo album and carrying on doing your walks, and you're going, I had a little break, but I'm rolling on through it, and things are. And it's funny because the walking thing, it's not like as if you're getting back into. It's not like Keith Richards where you think, goodness, he's whatever he did, he fell out of a tree and had to have surgery or something, and then he just about managed to get back on stage. What you do is go, I've got through that, and now I'm going to go and walk 25 miles and play a gig at the end of it.
That's what I hope I will do.
Do you know what I mean? You're doing something very sort of, come on, let's get out in the world and deal with it.
I do feel that I should do something, maybe walk for a cancer charity next time.
Oh, that's interesting, because I think you've said to me before that you didn't. The point of walking was that you want to walk, you love
to do
walking.
the gigs and to do the walking.
And too many people go, oh, what are you doing it for?
I know.
And you say, well, because I enjoy walking.
Well, I just appreciate it so much what Hereford Hospital did for me, what the NHS did for me, and I just look at these other charities and, you know, the Macmillan charity, cancer charity and things like this, and it does alter your perception to that, because there are a load of people who are doing really, really good work. So that's one element of it. The other element is it gives you so much time to think, but you don't quite know whether you're thinking clearly. I mean, I don't yet know whether I'm waiting for a vibe, a positive vibe or a negative vibe or a very introspective thing to come along. It hasn't come along yet. I don't quite know how I have in the long term reacted to this. Maybe because it doesn't necessarily mean you have a long term. You know, I don't know. I've started to think of music again. I've started to think of where things are going. I've started to plan a little bit for 2 or 3 years' time. So I know I'm getting better. But the main thing I want to do is just make sure that I can walk the distances with the same vigour that I used to do, and that I can still sing like I used to do.
Yeah.
And I can also, and the main thing is being able to exist on tour, because eating and drinking is a problem.
Yeah.
And I have to get beyond that. So yeah, I mean, I'm still waiting to see.
Okay, can I ask a couple more questions about the album? Who's on it? Tell me. So, for instance, something like Tim, for instance, who, Tim's such a big part of the sound and everything.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Cottrell is the fiddle player. He plays other instruments as well, but not only does he play superbly, but he walks with us as well.
He's such a pleasant walker.
He's a great.
He is. He's just
great guy. Yeah.
He's just like, whatever. Just gets on with it.
He's improved in his walking. He's got really, really fit.
Yeah.
I would put him and Al Scott, who obviously, I mean, as well as being the producer, is like at the heart of the music. So I mean, they're both Brighton based, and Al and Tim are like, they're the either side of
the yin and yang.
Yeah, well, either side of the music, of the song. They're there.
Yeah.
Well, gives
and
it.
They both do the walks.
They both
do all the walks.
Incredible. What gives it its special characteristic as well, I think, is like having Rowan sing, and we mentioned Rowan before, and Rowan doing the duets and adding the harmony vocals, and then Lindsay, which is finding someone who plays stand-up bass and who walks, and can sing, and is really, really into it. She's just such a vibey person. She's great. And then there are these special guests that we occasionally get in at great expense, like your good self. and Benji Kirkpatrick.
Yeah.
And one or two other people.
Flabby Nights.
Yeah, one or two other people as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Dill Davis is drumming on the album on certain tracks. Oyster Band's drummer, and Adrian Oxel, our new cello player, is on there as well. But
what's he playing on the album? Is he playing cello?
He's playing cello, a little bit cello, but yeah, it's.
At one point, there's like a sort of string quartet kind of sound on something. Is that Al?
It is it is a string. It is a string quartet. I think
so. Is that Adrian and Tim and?
Yeah. Adrian, Tim, and
it's beautiful.
And Lindsay. Yeah. Which is really nice, actually, having the three voices.
Yeah.
Of the strings to be able to do that. Like a lot of things, we try them. I say we. Al tries them out in the studio, and then we just get people to come in and play them.
Yeah.
But I think that's.
It would be easy to get the impression that when you listen to the album and then hear you talking about the different people on it, you get the impression that Al Scott has this sort of huge, 48-track desk type thing with a huge live room and lots of people coming and going. But actually, it's like a sort of cubbyhole.
It's a really small part of the studio.
Yeah.
That Al has.
It's very cosy.
But I mean, the Metway, which is the level of studios where we record, is a huge complex, really.
Yeah.
But we're in a little room, which befits our lo-fi sort of thing.
I think it does. Yeah.
And we've recorded outside as well sometimes, and in that there's a little porch as you go in.
Yeah.
And the vocal for Rambling Boys of Pleasure.
It was done in there.
It's done in there as a guide vocal for Benji to play the guitar, and Al liked it so much he kept it.
Excellent.
And I'm just doing a guide vocal.
Yeah. But there is something about the recording like that in a small space with just people coming and going and everything that it's similar to that demystifying thing that you were talking about with the walking. You're saying let's just do this in a different way than we maybe would do a big band going into some nice residential studio somewhere.
I think it is. It's a perfect antidote to the other side of my musical life, because for at least for 2 decades and longer, the Oyster Band recording is a really serious business.
Yeah,
you can't help but there is so much hanging on the record when you come to make it. It's which is rarer and rarer. It's to do with showing that the band is still a creative force. It's like sustaining a long career.
yeah,
Showing that you still have ideas, that you still have new songs, that you're still vital and whatever like that. The Ramblers thing just feels new. It feels still, this is only the second album, it still feels fresh to me. It has other people coming in. It just makes, I can work with Al Scott on the basic idea of the song, and then the song goes somewhere else.
yeah.
And it's really, really interesting. And I love that
If Al
aspect
Scott
of
wasn't
it.
around, what would you do?
I'd have to invent him, really. I would struggle in the sense that...
I get the impression he does the work of about 6, 7 people.
Yeah, he does. But I mean...
Cheap labour.
I wouldn't like to comment on that one. But I mean, the thing is, you've got to get an understanding of the songs and the voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
It helps that Al has worked with us for a long time, for 20 years, on Oyster Band albums.
Yeah.
So if anyone understands my voice, it's him. If anyone understands the nuances of my thinking, if anyone understands my moods, it's him. It helps, if you do that. And also, the thing is, you've got to... the critical point for me is that when I bring these songs, is Al's desire to work on them, and then Tim comes in, and then you come in, or and Ron comes in and says, "Hey, great song." I wait for that moment.
Yeah, yeah.
I wait for the moment. It's silence. I wouldn't know how to take. And is it just a nice song to sing? And I try to write choruses that people can join in with. That's my thing.
Yeah.
I love a good chorus. You know that.